Hey everyone, my name is Lucy. My company name is La Maison Juju, and this is the La Maison Juju podcast. So welcome to episode 2. In this episode, we're going to be talking about astrological magic, Astro Herbalism. That I'm going to be mentioning in this episode is a couple of company updates at the end. I'll leave it at the end for those that want to hear about it. So that way it doesn't interfere with the podcast program. So this is episode 2. It is a new podcast. The La Maison Juju podcast is on 3 things: astrology, divination, and magic. But of course, trickled in there is paranormal topics, all kinds of interesting occult topics as well. So I'm trying for the podcast to be weekly, but it's going to be a little bit before I can do that. We're looking at monthly now, and I'm going to try to have a schedule for it. First, we're going to talk about astrological magic briefly, and then we're going to talk about Astro Herbalism and maybe a couple of other related sidebars that go with that. The first thing is, astrological magic is really a thing. It has very reputable, famous names in it. It has a rich history. It has ancient texts. It has all kinds of interesting discoveries and all kinds of things embedded in the history of astrological magic. There's a lot of baloney out there too. But there's a lot of good stuff too. It's a little it's quite niche, so it's hard to find that type of info. But since I'm a practitioner, I'll be able to shed a lot of light on stuff if that's something that interests you. So the first thing is, people say, well, what is astrological magic? Without getting into the stuff I just mentioned, getting into more a basic beginner level concept understanding of what it is, and not just beginner level. This is like in a nutshell what it is. It's as follows. We're going to start with an analogy, because the definition of it wouldn't be suffice. Let's start with an analogy. There's a person, they walk into a occult shop and they say, hi, I am interested in buying spells for money because I want to get hired. So the magical practitioner would say, okay, I have this candle I can prepare for you, or this spell, or whatever, an amulet, whatever it is. Another example would be that the person walks into the occult shop and they get a divination reading. So say tarot cards or crystals or charms or whatever. And in that reading, it pops up that they're going to be having trouble in the workplace, trouble with their boss. So the next approach would be, because it's important that a diviner is not required to be a magical practitioner, and a magical practitioner is not required to be a diviner. And a lot of times, you'll bump into readers, not necessarily diviners, and you'll bump into magical practitioners that just do basic divination inquiry, but nothing to a deep divination level. So, of course, understanding that you would go to either a place that has 2 professionals that offer those services, or you would go to a place where the one person has mastered both. So, you would then, get a reading, and in the reading would pop up that the person was going to have trouble, with her boss. And at that point, the magical practitioner would say, okay, well, I recommend to you, if you're getting a reading with a reader or a reading with a diviner, the diviner will have steps to take. The reader will say, why don't you see so-and-so over there behind the counter? And they will send you some magical prescriptions, magical things for you to take care of your money issue. So at that point, the person would then do something for their life at that moment that's fitting at that moment in their life, because it came up in a reading, and they feel that it resonated, and they feel, you know, that this is the direction they should take, and they go ahead and they buy the candle, or they buy the spell, or whatever magical product or regimen is, you know, it entails. And they would, you know, get with it, go through it, and get the result. So one is that a person has the desire, I want this. The other example is the person gets a reading and it pops up, and then they feel it resonates with them, and they go through with it and they get that done. So those are two examples. That is regular magical practice. Astrological magic has that kind of concept, but here are the differences. A person gets their natal chart read, and then they go back and they get a horoscope, a current horoscope, to the same astrologer. So this astrologer starts comparing the notes, and they see a lot deeper understanding. The first time you go to an astrologer, they deliver a professional will deliver anything that the client needs of what they offer. But the more they get to know you, the more the analysis, the more deep layers of analysis are done than, you know, your standard reading that you purchase. Obviously, familiarity, you know, is important with anything. If you visit a doctor and it's the first time you're visiting that primary care physician, they don't know you. They're doctors, they can handle anything you're dealing with, but they don't know you. And it's not the same as someone who starts to get to know your body. They get to know your the way you respond to medicines, or what your allergies are. They remember these things, or maybe they have close observation over something, or they know the family. It's different. Anything that you do in life, not just the body, not just spirituality, not just, you know, it could be a chef or a personal trainer or someone who works with you with something that you need. The more that you establish a foundation, a basis, a familiarity, and a bond with that person giving you a professional service, the more it helps, because stability is quite strong and potent. So once this astrologer studies both charts, you know, one the horoscope and one, I should say annual horoscope, and one the natal, they have a lot to work with. And if they're astrological magic practitioners as well, because not all astrologers practice astrological magic, but all astrological magical practitioners are astrologers. But just not every astrologer is a astrological magical practitioner. Two different things, but you have to be one to be the other. If you have to be, you know, an astrologer if you're a astrological magical practitioner. So this is when the astrologer looks at the charts and says, okay, well, this is a lot of this destiny is already plotted in your natal. Now things are getting activated in this area in your horoscope. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cast magic, or, you know, I'm going to cast magic for this part of your chart to prevent something, or to help you out, or to bend and flex destiny a little bit, wiggle room, influence it. And the person says, okay, let's go for it. And then the precision of time, well, hold that thought. Now let's go back to the other analogy of magical practice. So we paused and froze in time. The astrologer studying the charts going to do astrological magic on the person. Let's travel over to the other example, and let's pick up where I left off. A person goes and deals with a regular magical practitioner. What is that magical practitioner going to do? A lot of times, depending on how they work and their style and everything, you know, it's not uncommon where magical practitioners of different faiths, different backgrounds, sometimes they work with the sun. Sometimes it's very early in the morning they like to work, or maybe it's right at noon, or maybe it's right before noon. Some people have a favorite time of the day, a favorite hour. And sometimes they wait for the moon. There's certain things that you have to do in lunar phases, or a certain time at night, or maybe it's a stroke of a certain hour, or whatever. So that's very common. Now let's go back to astrological magic. It's more than that. It's a lot more than just the sun or the moon phase. You see, the precision is extremely important in astrology. They have to not only look at the night sky, you know, not literally, but understanding what's going on astrologically, and, you know, a chart for the month, a chart for the week, etc. And, you know, understanding what is going to be activated and in what way and what is aspecting and everything in the person's chart. So based on that, the precision of what they're doing, their magical setup, and the precision of the chart. So astrological magic takes a great deal of, precision is a great word. Magic is very precise, but astrological magic is meticulous. So it's a whole other level because of that precision, because of the alchemy, if you will. The ingredients, you're waiting for planets to communicate, you see, with the sun and the moon and everything else, and then looking at the area of the client's chart that has to be activated. So you're waiting on very, very, very precise time. And that is key. Now you can make amulets, you can make talismans, you can cast spells, you can do all kinds of things. So what is it for? All right, let's say a person is going to have, in their natal chart, it says that at a certain point in their life, they're going to be fired from their career. And the career is something they've had for many years. And that being fired is so difficult on them that it causes a strain for 3 years. All right, so there are things that can be done with precision to prevent the firing. Now, you can't erase destiny, but you can tinker with it and bend it and do all kinds of neat things, right? And you can do something so, if it's properly done, you can do something so that you can kind of bend what happens. So let's say that the person ends up not getting fired, but they end up, maybe they got demoted. Maybe that they got demoted instead of, you know, staying where they were at. All right, so now you've influenced something that was going to be really bad to be not as bad. You see, you can do it for good as well. Good things coming, all kinds of things that you can prepare for life. So in ancient religions across the world, without getting into a theological topic or a sidebar too far into it, many ancient religions in the world have their own method and process for influencing destiny. Destiny is very powerful. Karma is extremely powerful. And it's something that can be adjusted, but not erased and rewritten, but in some cases it may. Anyway, so that's a whole other thing. Very amazing topic on its own, but I digress. So let's go back to what I was saying. So astrological magic is a proactive way of saying, hey, this is going to happen. How can I make it better with magic? Hey, you know, this is going to be good for me. How can I improve it or double the luck or whatever? You know, how can I improve it? How can I avoid that using magic? There's things that you can avoid by changing your character, changing your method, changing your approach, self-challenge. Some religions have a purging and prayer process. Some religions have just different ways that we could sit here all day. I'll give you one example. in Hinduism. You know, one of the medicines, if you will, that are applied to, you know, dealing with a certain challenge in life are doing yogas, specific yogas, you know, and certain prayers and offerings and wordage of the prayer to certain gods or goddesses, you know, in Hinduism. It's a whole other explanation. I can shed light on it. It's a topic that's really cool. I've you know, I'm very, very enamored with it. You know, the way that different religions around the world deal with and have their proactive hand in kind of changing the trajectory of destiny and what's allowed and what's not and everything. So, but if you look at it and ancient religions, you know, Islamic faith and, you know, the Jewish faith with the Kabbalah and the mystical part and, you know, even Catholicism, like, you know, even those religions also have their way of waiting for certain seasons or prepping for something that's going to happen. You know, seasons and change, and very connected with nature. If you kind of look at that, it is there. You know, it's not just something we would do with agriculture and the tides and, you know, the sun and the moon and cycles. Sometimes it's deeper. So anyway, like I said, that's getting into other theological topics, but getting back to it, in astrology, which we call Western astrology, which it's, by the way, not the only zodiac in the world. There are many different zodiac systems, or I should say astrological systems. But the one that we refer to as the West is really East. It is Arabic in root. So, and that's the way to deal with it, with the magical part. It's not the only way. There are other things that one can do just by having awareness and personality shifting and, you know, all kinds of things like that. You know, mind over matter, you know, but the magical approach would be that. So I hope that shed light on it. You know, one last concept, you know, I gave the example, person wants a spell to, you know, solve a problem in their life. Example number 2, person gets a reading and it's brought up in the reading that they need, you know, whatever product or regimen to solve their problem. And astrological magic would be that you're looking for certain areas or highlights in the life, and you are altering it, whether for good or for bad influence, with astrologically precise timing magic. And of course, learning the ingredients of what planets you're working with and all of that. So now let's get into, I was going to say Astro Herbalism, but let's get into something. So on my website, there's a section where you can click on buying different types of astrology readings. And then there's a button where under magic, astrological magic is there. So you would pick the week that you're born and you would purchase a bundle of magic for that week. And the whole point would be that it would change something that's coming in a horoscope. So that's what that would be. It's hard to explain, so I'd rather do it here on the website. I'm sure a lot of people are like, what's astrological magic? That sounds really cool. I'm a second week Aries or something. And they would just go and get that, but not really know what they're buying. So that's what it's for, to give you an understanding. Now we can go on to Astro Herbalism. So I don't want to make this whole podcast about all the things I do in herbalism and all of that. I want to just focus on Astro Herbalism. So Astro Herbalism is the merger of astrology and the merger of herbalism. So let's start with the following. When you go to an herbalist, you want to, use an alternative natural form of medicine. I'm not going to say homeopathic because that's a whole other thing, but essentially you want a home remedy or a natural remedy, a natural medicine, as a solution for the ailment or the problem or whatever, instead of something, pharma made. And when you do that, you go to an herbalist, they, depending on how they work and all of that, they would, give the tincture or the regimen or, whatever it is. And when it comes to, magical herbalism, and I did a video on this on my TikTok feed under the folder playlist Magical Herbalism. I'm not going to repeat what I said in that video, but I'll give a rough idea in this podcast. Herbalism, magical herbalism, is instead of, having someone consume the plant, which would be, it can be under spiritual herbalism. That's different, where the shamanic approach would be, as in medicine or plant medicine. But a magical herbalist concerns themselves, and that's, what I am, concerns themselves with, things that are topical, but not medicine for the body, for the anatomy and physiology of the body, but instead the health of the aura and the health of the inner core and the health of the chakras and energy field of the person. So it's not, they don't see patients, they see clients, right? So that's the difference. There's a lot more, but that's a big one. So let's start off. Herbalism is a clinical approach. There's many different kinds of herbalists. And, I wear a couple of hats when it comes to herbalism and herbology and all of that. But let's stick with this for a minute because the focus here is explaining astroherbalism. So what is the difference between a magical herbalist and an astroherbalism? Quite a lot. In fact, they're not the same thing at all. I'm both, so I can explain it. Let's take a rose. All right. I'm not going to mention the specific species of it. Let's just call it a generic rose. One generic rose is used by an herbalist to heal XXXXX, whatever it is in the body. The eyes, the stomach, the nose, the mouth, the skin, whatever. Okay, now, after the herbalist and the rose, let's go to a spiritual herbalist. So a spiritual herbalist might have some kind of special ceremony where the person meditates first and maybe does a prayer or something, and then they go on, using the rose like the clinical approach, which would be the herbalist way. All right, now let's go to magical herbalist. Same rose, but you see the concern, even though the magical herbalist has to know the clinical herbal use for it, the medicinal purpose of it, for the internal body, for the anatomy and physiology. But their concern is the exterior, the aura, right? Energy fields, chakras, everything else I said. So then the rose is not going to be looked at medicinally. But the magical herbalist has to know everything up to par, as an herbalist, even though they're not required to be herbalists. But a magical herbalist is only required to understand all of the uses globally positive and negative, good and evil of a rose. That's the difference. Now, an astrological herbalist, same rose. Let's say that one person was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And in January, let's say that rose specific species blooms. Just saying. Okay? We have to get into agricultural zones. We have to get into, all those farmer good things. Which is what I was saying, the alignment and precision with nature and all that. So the same rose, Astro herbalist, same rose, same example. Now they're saying, okay, my client is a Capricorn and they live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this species, call it subspecies of rose. I just made that up, subspecies of rose blooms in January. Late December, early January, in Santa Fe, and the client was born in Santa Fe. So now this rose is significant to them. It is now something they can use very powerfully. And it would be, Saturn ruled. So here's the problem. And there is a problem, a big one. In the world, there are some books, some suck, some have really good parts, but nobody knows the fucking truth. Nobody really knows what plant is ruled by Saturn and what plant is ruled by. So this is the part where I'm going to be very candid with you. As always, I'll try to be very upfront and explain to you that there are areas that I don't agree with the rest of the astro herbalist world. I've read the books, tons of books, seen the, all the content on it, and I don't agree. People say that plants, if they're for love, they're Venus. Okay? And if they're angry, then they have to be Mars flowers or Mars plants if they have an edge to them. That makes no fucking sense. Zero sense. And I'm going to tell you why. Earth is the only planet that is green and blue. Okay? We have plants on Earth. So Earth rules plants. Now, we have the sun and the moon, which are the two only exclusive celestial beings, celestial bodies, celestial placements, planets, because the sun is a star. It's the brightest star. And the moon is a luminary and a celestial body, actually Earth's satellite, to be technical. They're not planets, but those are the two celestial bodies that make, that with water and all the elements, make life on Earth thrive. And that's why we have green, gorgeous plants everywhere. It's an Earth thing, okay? So that being primarily important, let's look at my next point. Astrology, and I may lose brownie points in the niche. Oh, who's that weirdo with her fucking weird concepts? I don't care. It's my podcast, and I'm going to say my mind. I mean, I've been practicing astrology for all of my life, almost. Okay, and been an herbalist and everything else my entire life. So yeah, I have an opinion, and this is it. So, so people say, well, no, this is the rose is for love, so it's got to be Venus. All the flowers for love are Venus. What fucking bullshit. Let me explain why. If I am not making sense already, let me keep trying. So Do I think that other planets have rule or effect on plants? Yes. Why do I think that? When I just defended that the moon and the sun are what really preliminary gives plants their life and lets them thrive, along with the other elements, earth, air, fire, water. Well, because planets influence us. I'm an astrologer, very well aware that astrology is not astronomy. Very well aware that we cannot be, we can't be calling astrology a science. That's, please, my God, no, ridiculous. It is a pseudoscience. And I practice it, and that's what I am. That's my title in life. Astrologer, Astro Herbalist, all these titles, psychic, diviner, blah, 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 whatever. But I'm here to say science is science and spirituality is spirituality. And it's different, So there are famous scientists in my family. Of course I'm going to defend science, but look at what I do for a living. I'm going to defend spirituality. I come from a magical bloodline. So I'm open-minded to both. But you don't sit there calling one a science. But there is some science to a pseudoscience. Absolutely. Okay, but it's different things. So planets do influence us. If not, astrology wouldn't exist. Absolutely. That's what I do all the time, is I read charts and I just see astrology so obvious and so real. Of course it influences everything on Earth. Plants, animals, humans, minerals, everything. What I'm saying is that I think that the community, the niche of Astroherbalism and merging herbology and herbalism with astrology, the gobbledygook that I have heard throughout the grapevine, throughout the content provided, I think is full of shit. And the reason that I do is because they say you're basing a plant on the theme of a planet. When, hold up, you can't read a chart in astrology, like zero. You cannot read a chart in astrology without knowing the precise time a person's born, without knowing, the date, the day, the month, the location, latitude and longitude, etc. You need this. So all of a sudden, the sun, where it's shining the brightest, and the ascendant, which is the highest point, marks that entire person for life with an identity. That's why they call it the big three. So you mean to tell me that people are going to have a precision with their chart, but when it comes to plants, they don't? I mean, I'm a horary astrologer as well. For God's sake, a question has a chart. Electional. You have to do a chart. Every state has a chart. Every country has a chart, etc. You mean to tell me that we're not going to have that level of precision for a plant? We're just going to say, oh, if it's happy, it belongs to this planet. And if it's a type of plant that's like mean, we'll call it a Pluto. Pluto ruled. No. You know how I believe that it is? I believe that it's wherever the sun's shining, whatever it's in bloom. Think about it. A baby is born September 9th. They're a Virgo. So let's say that they're born on the East Coast of the United States. Okay. The plants that are thriving in bloom when they're born around their area where they're born is going to be their plants that are the most important, because it's when the sun was in their sun sign. let's say that the year keeps changing and they, at maybe, let's say the age of 20, they're looking for a plant. They look at their chart and it's now, let's say, Scorpio season. Well, they're not a Scorpio, they're a Virgo. So let's look at the Scorpio season. So they can't pluck flowers and plants from the Virgo season because that was gone. They're wanting to pluck plants and flowers right now for magical use in you know, the end of October, you know, large chunk of November season because it's Scorpio season. So now you have, that's where the sun is. So you're going to have to deal with not only understanding that you're going to pluck Scorpio plants because it's Scorpio season, that's where the sun is shining, but you also have to look at what else is happening on in the astrological night sky and what is aspecting what and plucking it what. So what I'm saying to you is that the ownership of plants change according to when they're blooming, and how they're attributed to each individual person has to do with the precision of their chart of where they're at. So how did astrology get from being so relaxed and you know, when it's something so precise? Now there's another layer of it. And let me explain what that is. And here's where we're going to layer on some science in a pseudoscience. All right, different things. I don't mix science with pseudoscience, but let's just add that layer, okay, to understand So plants have life cycles, you know, like annuals, perennials, so you know, how often they bloom, the interesting thing happening under the soil in the root system. You know, plants, you know, depending on their cycle is, you know, that they're on top of it, right? Of what's going on with each individual species. So another thing that we have to really consider is photoperiodism. And that is, you know, getting into, you know, the plant science and how chemical changes, depending on light structure, stimulation from the sun and so forth, affect that activity. You know, they're very susceptible to changes when it comes to weather, atmospheric pressure, you know, temperature and things like that. So some plants are free of photoperiodism. Not all have that. But you know, science is complicated. So plants a lot of times can be classified by their response to photoperiodism. So other plants, you know, get that signal to bloom when they reach a certain growth period, you know? So that's important to mention as well. There was a lot of research, you know, many decades ago. For a long time, scientists thought that, you know, the exposure to sunlight or light would be the trigger. But it's been shown that actually vast periods of darkness have more of a role. So again, the moon and the sun have such a pivotal role in, you know, plant cycles. You know, this is just paramount to thriving greens. You know, and I was talking about that before. So the influence of the planets are there, but, you know, obviously the anchor of everything would be, you know, the star and the satellite, not just, you know, surrounding planets. But of course, there's a huge influence from surrounding planets. But I feel that it's with the alignment and consideration of the luminaries, is my opinion particular. So not to get too much deeper into it, but there's, you know, photochrome and florigen, and we're, you know, that's getting deeper into the, you know, chemical structure of what's going on inside the plant. Trying to keep it simple here, but, you know, this again affects change. So I'm just explaining that the process of stimulation is, driven by essentially periods of light and periods of dark, right? And again, explaining how, to me, understanding that the focal point of the luminaries is essential to then assessing what, when they're in bloom and in what area. We all don't have the same agricultural zones. So I'll give you another concept, all right? Nutritionally. If you are born in a certain part of the world, and every spring there is a vegetable that is thriving, chances are that you're going to be very nourished and do very well with that vegetable, because it's a staple. There's always exceptions, but primarily eating local and sustainable and all of that comes from that concept primarily. Nutritionally, that is, not socioeconomic, right? So when you shift that and understand, well, I want this that is, I could be from the East US and I want something from Thailand right now. I want to eat it every night. Okay, so that's not your part of the world. So no one's saying don't eat exotic foods, but that produce is not grown, especially in your zone, and you can't just desire that every day. It's not a local dish. It's not something that is endemic to your area where you were born and grew up. So it's going to have nourishment, but they have to cut it, bottle it, process it, or just spray it and put it through all this, tampering with. It's not the same, right? So if we're looking at organic food, and that's a whole other topic I don't want to get into because it's so political and everything. But anyway, I'm just saying, I grow my own food, so I have a lot to say, and I eat organic. So, but anyway, sticking to the topic of, what I'm saying, which is you want to eat what the earth is giving you, where you live, where you're thriving, where you're from. Well, what if I was born in this part of the world and then I went and lived, all my life, grew up somewhere over there? Okay, well then it's wherever you've spent most of your life. There's going to be a spiritual connection where the foods are produced from where you live, but your home and the earth and climate and atmosphere and agricultural growing zone and everything else that you're in, you're thriving, you grew, you developed, was in a different part. You're going to go to wherever it is that you grew up, right? So again, the concept of what I'm saying, it's how can the astrological, botanical world, the astro herbal world, how can they just be so careless and say, okay, no, it's because love affects this and anger and, this is Saturn and this is, what happened to all the precision? Like, just stay balanced. It makes zero sense. You can't just say a rose is always going to be Venus. No, it doesn't make sense to me. Everything is such a precision. I believe that you have to look at where the person was born, and you have to look at the season they were born in, and you have to look at what you're plucking, what you're harvesting, and then a relationship between the luminaries. Absolutely, how can that be forgotten? So that's my take on it. Now, generally, stepping back from my opinion, answering the question, okay, what is Astro Herbalism? It's the herbalism knowledge of how a plant can be used, sometimes medicinally and sometimes spiritually. So one for the aura and spirit and affecting energy, and one for the mouth to, ailments and the body and healing. So either way, taking the herbalist understanding of the plant or the specimen, and then understanding astrology with it. And it's the astrology part that's linked to the herbalism that I'm having a hard time gripping because of what I just explained. Because of what I feel is just a key factor. Okay, it's a key factor in what I believe. So if a person was born in Pisces season and they were born in a tropical place and things are thriving there, so Pisces is ruled by Neptune. So I'm saying that the plants that they that were available when they were born, where they're born, for them has the influence of Pisces, has the influence of Neptune. So they are Neptunian flowers, plants for that person. And then if you want to, it's wherever the sun is shining the brightest. Now the lunar layer has a different thing as well. And that, I can get into in another video. I have my opinions about that as well. The layers of the moon, because, we have diurnal and nocturnal plants. In fact, all plants in the world can be divided between diurnal and nocturnal. I mean, forgetting all the other interesting factors of, subcategories and everything like that, properly done in the botanical world and the horticultural world and things like that. That's different. That's the science. But if we were to do it, cut that fine line, yeah, everything's either diurnal or nocturnal. Animals too. There's night and day, moon and sun. And that is a key factor. And so I'm saying that things that thrive when the sun is in Pisces season are all Neptune. Things that are thriving and blossom and grow in, when it is August, are Leo, are sun-ruled plants. That's what I'm saying, And then, of course, the added, not collective, but the added personalized is, that's when you look for, okay, well, what part of the world am I in? Where was I born? What is native here? What's endemic here? What's invasive, and blah, blah, blah. And then you would have that layer of customization. But to start off, understanding that where the sun is shining and whatever's in bloom, it would be the ruling planet of that, unless it's double sun, because the sun and the sun, Leo, double sun. So anything that blooms in August would be double sun, the Leo season flowers, Leo season plants, The concept of taking the attribute of, now let me explain this as well, which is important. So in many religions in the world and many magical faiths, and in old medicine systems as well throughout the world, medicine systems, which are very sacred and very beautiful, it's known that the vernacular words are for plants are based on their characteristics. Are they bitter? Is it short? Do they have a long root? Does it petal? Does it fruit? Is it fruit bearing? Whatever. It will have a name. Are they more white? Does it have sap? Does it have fuzzy, stems? Whatever. Based on their characteristics, their flavor, their taste, their fragrance, their structure, characteristics of what they have, it's known that, vernacular names are based on that, which is observation. There's nothing wrong with that. So, taking a flower and seeing, well, I'm observing that it's for love, so this is Venus. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong with it is the reason for my approach is because astrology in particular has precision. A precision much more than just observational vernacular names, observational things. It's tailor-made to a person's chart. So to me, that is more vital and more important than saying, well, this is short, and if Pluto's a dwarf planet, then I guess it should be, all short things should belong to Pluto. What? All red things should be Mars. What? It's just it makes sense in some ways, but this isn't stories and parables. This is precision. So astrology has that. And I hope that made sense. So you don't have to believe what I believe. We could totally debate about it, but that's what's fun about podcasts. We share things and things like that, but that is my opinion. I hope that shed light. I'm trying to see, there's a couple of other things I wanted to say with the topic. The difference between magical herbalism and Astro Herbalism is that magical herbalism has nothing to do with astrology. It's the magic use of a plant. But Astro Herbalism is the magic that has to do with plants with the precision of astrology. The application of what's being unlocked in a natal chart, and what transits and aspects are opening things up, what is aligning. That is what I'm saying. So I will type something up on this in my Patreon, and I will be doing another video for my patrons, shining a light on some of these topics, opening up even more. And I hope you liked it. I hope it got, if you're interested in this kind of thing. So let me know what you think. I don't expect you to believe what I believe. We live in a big world. But I did want to share that and also shed light on interesting topics. So, do I believe that crystals and minerals and fungi follow the same rules? Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. But we'll leave crystals for another video. Astral mineralogy. We will definitely be getting into that. So now at this point on the program, I just want to talk about some changes to the company. So I want to talk about the fact that, I'm a psychic, I'm a diviner, magical practitioner. I divine a lot of different things. I'm a tarot master, I'm a runic master. If you don't know what that is, I can gladly explain how to accomplish that and how that is and all of that. But I find that, in the direction that I feel is for me, even though I'm always going to do readings and divination for clients, but the direction for me is shifting a little bit. I always know that I would around my 4th or 5th year of business. I said that at the beginning of my business anyway, that I would be reaching a certain goal by a certain year, and I'm always planning ahead. So my website's changed and my menus and stuff. You can still find some of the older stuff on there as well, but there's some content I'm creating. So there's a video series. Actually, you know what? I'll make it short. All you have to do is, when you go to my website, which is thejujugarden.com, you can still reach me at lamaisonjuju.com, but a lot of people don't know how to spell it. And they call it mason, like a mason jar. It's not, it means house in French. So anyway, so you can still reach me on that, but that's a tongue twister. And then the magical herbalism is really long. I own it too, but it's really long.com domain. And the short one is the Juju Garden. So if you want to find out what that is, that's my poison garden that I own and operate. And I have a line of spells and products that I make from the garden. And the content, all you have to do is go to thejujugarden.com, which is my website, and click on content, and you can just see it all there. You can see how I have a video series, a different Patreon tier where I show, I'm going to be showing behind the scenes and all that. So I'll just spare you the long details. I just wanted to announce that if you're into that, you can click on that and I'll talk about it more in another episode. So the other episode that I want to touch on, so one of the things I want to do is, if you want me to expand on some of these episodes, I was thinking of expanding them on my Patreon astrology tier. That would be a great place for discussion and things. But you know, if it's enough content where it would take up an entire session, then, you know, I would gladly, you know, film a part 2. So for the next episode, I think that getting into, you know, hexes and what it's about, that seems like a really good topic. Another one is cartomancy and some of the things that I have to say about it. Those are fun. So those are my thoughts. See you next time, folks. Thank you so much. The more follows that I get, you don't have to comment if you don't want to. Some people are shy, some people are not. I don't always read comments sometimes because I'm pretty busy. But if you want to leave comments, that's fine. I'll try to get back to them. And if you want to follow, then that lets me know that you want more episodes. All right. So if you know, I'm going to keep doing episodes. I know it's a slow growth. You know, YouTube's really slow to grow. It takes a long time. But, you know, I'm also not going to, you know, waste my time doing stuff if I don't see that, you know, people are enjoying the content. You know, if you have any questions on anything that I said, you can always put your question down below. If you have any comments, you can leave them down below. And if you have any requests for future topics, let me know. But for now, those are the ones that I think I'm going to be doing it on. And I'm going to try to do more back-to-back. All right, more frequency and stuff. So, all right, have a beautiful rest of the week or month or whenever this is when you're watching this. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.